I'm your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell. I'm an astrologer, therapist, tarot reader, and weekly weather forecaster. So come on in. Welcome to another jaunt through the music of the spheres as we unpack all the astrological information that is pertinent for this week, or maybe almost all of it. There's a lot going on in space this week, including Saturn's ingress into Aries, which is kind of a big one. We have a bunch of trines and sextiles, nice supportive aspects taking us through this week. And so there's a lot happening, but a lot of the aspects are harmonious, or I don't want to say easy because what's easy? You know what I'm saying? But there's some harmonious and supportive aspects this week. Before we get deep into the astrology, just a couple heads up of things that I'm doing and have going on. I do a weekly astrology themed radio show called the Melee Report, which is very much like this, but more rock, less talk. It's a playlist that I curate to talk about the astrological weather, and I jump in once in a while and tell you what's going on. If you want to check that out, I just put a link in my stories, and I'll put a link in the show notes for the folks on YouTube and for the podcast. Me and my partner, Marlena Seven Bremner, the brilliant alchemist and artist and author, just completed our 8-part class on the classical planets, and that's now available for purchase on her website, marlena7bremner.com. There's a link in my bio for the Instagram folks, and I'll put a link in the show notes for that as well. It's a great class, really in-depth deep dive into the archetypes of the planets. What else? Oh, in September, September 20th through 27th, I'm going to be co-facilitating a retreat in Greece with Sarah Janes, who's an author and mythologist and dream worker, and we'll be talking about sacred healing waters in Greece and go into some sacred sites. And I'll be talking about the water signs in the chart, and I don't know, talking about dreams. It'll be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in having a really good time, come join me in Greece in September. All right. I think that's all the advertisements. Let's get into the Astro Weather, shall we? So before we jump into this week's astrology, I just want to do a brief recap of the Uranus Sun conjunction, which occurred this past Saturday, May the 17th. And yeah, so a couple of things that I noticed in the news. Good morning, my friends. Come on in, relax, sit down. Let me take you on a voyage. Let me take you on a 3 hour tour. The first one that I noticed happened a little earlier in the week. On May 15th, the Nottoway plantation burned down in Iberville, Louisiana, which was the largest remaining antebellum plantation slash mansion slash resort. It's still a plantation. And I just wanted to read you like a couple sentences from Black Enterprise, who said, "The Nottoway Plantation, a monument to Southern grandeur built on the backs of enslaved people, has been destroyed by a fire that raged for nearly 40 hours beginning late May 15th. The inferno gutted the 160-year-old estate turned resort, once the largest mansion remaining in the South. It was built in 1859 by sugar magnate John Hamden Randolph, and the estate was powered by the forced labor of more than 150 enslaved people." And so that burned down this week as the Sun-Uranus conjunction was perfecting. Also, on Saturday night, which was the night of the Uranus Sun conjunction, a Mexican tall ship crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge, and was like pretty shocking. I haven't really looked at much of the news around that. I just saw it on Instagram, but that is a very unpredictable, unexpected Sun Uranus moment. Good morning, Gina Maria. And then last Wednesday, Elon Musk's AI Grok that he has on X, formerly Twitter, starts spouting out conspiracy theories about white genocide in South Africa, and people who are asking about like how many times has HBO changed their name, or like what's a good recipe to cook casserole, are getting their responses sort of embedded with unsolicited information about a fictitious historical event. And again, these are like it seems to me these are kind of manifestations of the Sun-Uranus conjunction. Um, oh, and Gina Maria is saying the ship was going the wrong way. All of this is like, kind of unpredictable chaos and unforeseen events and sort of weird glitches, which I think the Sun-Uranus conjunction kind of brings to light. And yeah, just sort of curious how people's weekends were managing that. But anyway, I just wanted to do a quick recap because one of the things that I really love about astrology is it's like, okay, here are the symbols, right? And here are like multiple ways that the symbols can play out. And then I look at the news and I'm like, oh, damn, that's how it turned out. That's what happened there. So it's always interesting to kind of look back and see how these symbolic relationships have manifested in the mundane world. So, turning our attention to this week, on Tuesday, May the 20th, that would be tomorrow, the Sun in Taurus sextile Saturn in Pisces. This is happening at the very anaretic degree of Pisces and Taurus at 29 degrees and 37 arc minutes. And sextile is a supportive aspect, and this transit helps us to kind of structure the things that bring a sense of security and pleasure and joy, these kind of Taurian themes. And as the sun is at the kind of very edge of Taurus, where it's kind of looking back and being like, okay, what did I learn here, right? What did I get from this? What can I take with me? And this is part of the reason that the anaretic degree, the 29th degree, is supercharged, is because it's this like last moment of being like, okay, what loose ends do I need to tie up? What final things do I need to prepare for? What am I gathering from my experience here? Right. And so the sun is sort of gathering up these Taurian themes of values, security, pleasure, joy, right? Taurus being ruled by Venus. Um, so the sun in the fixed sign of Taurus is kind of illuminating the parts of our lives that we value and that make us feel resourced and feel good in the world. Saturn provides some structure around those things that we can bet so that we can better maintain them. Um, and sextiles are kind of relational, so there's good communication that's kind of opened up between the sun and our aspirations and our like sense of self in some ways, and Saturn, which is creating structures and provides commitment and a sense of discipline, right? And so the sun may be aspiring to maintain the things that it likes in Taurus and to get more of what feels good. And Saturn can really help us to take responsibility for the things that bring us joy, right? And, if we don't take responsibility for the things that we like, they kind of, disintegrate or dissolve or, become unusable. And, so Saturn helps us to dedicate ourselves to creating situations that make us feel good. It also brings in limitations, which can be really helpful when we are dealing in the Taurian realm of sensual pleasure, right? Which Taurus is really into as a Venus ruled sign. So, for example, like one cookie might be great, right? But if one cookie's great, maybe six cookies would be even better, right? Because C is for cookie, and that's good enough for me. And then Saturn comes in and like smacks the bag of cookies out of your hand and it's like, get a grip, man. Right? Get to work. You can have a cookie when this thing is done. Right. So Saturn can be really helpful in situations where we are creating foundations that allow us to have enough safety and resource to be able to experience joy without the fear that it'll create instability, right? Or the sort of scarcity mentality that can come in, right? And which causes us to kind of cling to things. Saturn can help us really develop systems of safety and inner resource and outer resource, um, so that we are able to kind of have more of what we want, right? Without experiencing negative repercussions or craving or clinging or grasping or having the things that bring us joy create instability, right? Saturn sextile to the sun also helps us to do the difficult work in order to create our preferred reality. If the sun is like, I want more of this, Saturn's like, what are you going to do that? Right? Here, let's come up with a plan. Let's come up with a structure. Right? And Saturn really helps us to suit up and show up for the work that is laid out before us, so that we're more capable of creating our preferred reality. Right? Oh, happy birthday, Snake Channeler. That's great. And happy birthday to your cat. Um, so also for your birthday, Snake Channeler, my friend, on May 20th, the sun enters Gemini. And I'm kind of curious if you're a Gemini or a Taurus now that I'm looking at this. But, as the sun enters Gemini, right, it's entering into a mutable air sign that's ruled by Mercury. It's fast moving, right, and interested in information and communication. And when I think about Gemini, when I was putting this together, I was thinking about the Bob Dylan movie that just came out, which I can never remember. A Complete Unknown. It's like a terrible name. I can never remember it. Right, but there are these scenes in it where Timmy Chalamet, right, is playing Bob Dylan, and there's like uh, you know, he's sitting in an apartment with like the radio on and the TV on and like newspaper clippings and magazine clippings and notes and books and all of this stuff spread out around him. And like that's how Gemini rolls, right? Just like tons of information and kind of gathering little pieces of it and putting it together and weaving it together, right? And Bob Dylan has Mercury, Venus, and Sun in Gemini in the seventh whole sign, right? And this sort of like was a great depiction, I thought, of Dylan's songwriting process, right? Taking like kind of creating this collage of information and reconstituting it into a song or a poem or something that can be shared with the world, right? And so, like Gemini is all about the kind of collage of information, taking little bits and pieces from all these different disparate places and combining them and reconstituting them so that they can be communicated back to the world, right? And Gemini is connected with the archetype of the twins, right? The two sides of a situation or a discussion or a thought process. Part of me wants to do this, but the other part of me wants to do that, right? I'm a Taurus, but my cat is a Gemini, right? And so Mercury, who rules over Gemini, is also connected with the alchemical Mercurius, right? Who dissolves and combines materials. Right. And so the idea of Gemini is learning to kind of hold these opposites and find ways of combining them, right? Or dissolving their separation, bringing them together, and recognizing that even though they're two sides of a coin, right, they're still part of a coin. And so coming into that, it's not heads or tails, right? It's not left or right. It's like that point in the middle. And how do we bring the edges closer to the middle, right? Or how do we spend time holding what is different and what is disparate and what is maybe seems opposing, and how do we learn to hold those so that something new can emerge, right? And this is learning to hold the tension of the opposites and learning to sit in that tension. And this is really difficult, right? Because the mind hates ambiguity. It's like, I know this, I want that, that's what that is, right? And when we kind of sit in not like, this is my opinion and that's wrong, when we sit and like hold, okay, there are two things that are happening simultaneously, this kind of tension emerges. And if we can allow ourselves to be in that kind of ambiguity, you know what I'm saying? This in between space and the ambiguity, right? Something really interesting can emerge. And Mercury is a twilight planet, right? They are seen at dawn and dusk, right? And then they kind of disappear because they are washed out by the sun. And so they live in this kind of in between ambiguous space of the twilight, right? And this is great information because we can find ways during times where Mercury is spotlit, like when Mercury is in Gemini, which is going to happen at the end of the week, or the sun moves into Gemini. We can find ways of being in that twilight space, in that in between space where we don't need to know, where we can just sit and see what emerges, right? And I think when we are able to do it, it's like this alchemical moment, right? When we're able to be with this discomfort of holding both things until something unexpected emerges. And this is what Carl Jung talks about as the transcendent function in analysis. And so, you know, as the sun, right, moves through this mutable and mercurial sign of Gemini, it's an opportunity to hold multiple truths or points of view, or even sensations in the body, right? Recognizing what's happening here, not just what's happening up here, right? What does my hand and my foot feel like? Can I pat my head and rub my tummy? I can't do that, but I invite you to try, right? And this is an opportunity during Gemini season to increase our ability to sit with this tension and to be curious, which is a great Gemini word. What's happening here instead of needing to know, right? And to be able to be curious about this tension and hold space for what can emerge out of this tension and out of this situation. So Thursday, May the 22nd, we have Venus in Aries trining Mars in Leo at 15 degrees and 59 arc minutes of these two fire signs. So a trine, which is a supportive aspect, a flowing, harmonious aspect, happens between planets that are in the same element. And so we have Venus in Aries, which is the cardinal fire sign ruled by Mars, by the by, and then Mars in Leo, which is a fixed fire sign ruled by the sun. Right. And so Venus deals with relationships, values, aesthetics. Mars deals with conflict, action, and competition. Right. Um, and a trine is, like I said, a harmonious aspect that helps these planets support each other with their attributes, with their skills. And so this is a fire trine, like I said, right? And it's like hot, right? There's a lot of like fiery energy here. There's a lot of energy to claim our space and to be seen and to start things, right? There's energy to initiate and to take action as well as to express ourselves. And the fire signs have a lot to do with inspiration and what moves us. Fire is hot, right? It's all about spreading and consuming so that it can continue to spread. And it's always seeking to move upwards, right? And so it's fire is reaching upwards towards this idealized vision, right? And that vision, right, that it is striving for is what motivates and inspires us, stirs us to act. So Mars and Venus can really support each other in taking action to blaze a trail towards this vision, right? Using their skills and attributes and combining them. So this is a good day to really sit with our passions and our desires and to consider what the intuitive vision, right, that animates these desires is, and to consider ways that we can take action to move towards the things that we are passionate about and the things that bring us joy and pleasure in this life. And one way that I think about this relationship, or like a supportive relationship between Mars and Venus, is that Venus is like, "Hey, Mars, I want that thing," and Mars is like, "Yo, I got you," and like goes out and takes the action to procure it and bring it back to Venus, and then Venus enjoys the object of desire and shares that joy with Mars, right? And yes, this is going to be a fun week, but it takes like harmonious aspects take kind of work, right? Because they're a nice place for integration, for rest, for relaxation, because we're not dealing with the tension of oppositions or squares, the kind of traditional harder aspects, right? But we also need to like put in some work to really activate the harmonious relationship. And sometimes it's nice and like it's just enough to like sit and relax because whoo, this year has been kind of full on already. I'm like, I need a nap. But, sometimes we can like take the action. I think Mars really helps us to do this, to take the action to the thing around the thing that like we're like, oh, that's going to bring me joy. And sometimes we can just rest in what we have. And sometimes it's like, you know what? Like, I'm really going to like put myself out there, or I'm going to really do this thing, or I'm going to really assert myself. Right. And I think, this is something that like comes up with this relationship, right? Because Mars' skill of action can really support Venus's desire to feel good and to connect, right? Venus is very relational, right? And it can really help Venus to kind of assert themselves and to really own their desires. And also Venus's value system, and Venus I think is a lot about values, what I like, what I don't like, what I'm attracted to what I'm repulsed by, right? So Venus's value system really supports Mars in making good choices about the actions that we take, right? So we may have a multiplicity of desires, right? And I think we all do, right? And this is beautiful. And with the sun in Gemini, right, and this sort of idea of the collage of life or the multiplicity of life, we may get some information about like what this multiplicity of desires looks like, right? And learn to sit with that, right? And not feel like we need to act on every single one of them. And I think this is one of the things that Venus really helps in with this transit, right? Because acting on all of our desires, right, may not be possible, and it's probably not healthy. Right. And so, as we connect in with our Venusian value system, we can use that as a reference point to consider if our actions are skillful, right? If they're in alignment with who we truly are and what is really right for us in this moment. And so, under capitalism, right, we are constantly being fed these manufactured desires to feel like we're incomplete or inadequate or not enough, right? And we're taught to desire new and better products, more money, more space, more sex, more luxury, more substance, more style, etc., right? To kind of like fill this manufactured void in ourselves. And it's really important to kind of weigh these desires against our value system to make sure that what we are going after and taking action around comes from a really authentic place and is really aligned with our core values. So that we can be in right action and not just seeking pleasure or escape or being led astray through propaganda or other people's values that are being impressed upon us from external sources, right? So both Mars and Venus are relational, and they're relational in their own ways, right? Venus relates through love and sensuality, right? Creativity. Mars relates through conflict and competition. And in a trine, these attributes can really work together, right? So we can think about ways in which these two ways of relating can become intertwined and really support each other. Right? We can think about having challenging conversations where we are able to speak our truth, and this may bring us closer to the people that we care about, that we're in relationship with, or doing competitive activities that help us feel connected to the people that we are playing with or competing with. We can think about asserting ourselves, or, telling somebody you fancy them, which requires like some martial courage, right, to convey that Venusian message. Or we can connect with people that we love through energetic activities. And I'll let you imagine what that could look like on your own. So Venus also deals with aesthetics, right? And again, Mars is great at taking action. So this is a great day or week to engage in creative projects. Venus knows how to make things beautiful, and Mars has the courage to make like the first mark on the canvas, to be like, okay, we're in now, we're doing this. And when they work together, we get to experience the joy of that creative drive. And it can help with the create the motivation to follow through and to be able to make art or music or dance or really engage in and take pleasure from the act of creativity. And sort of lastly, hold on one second. In mythology, Mars and Venus, or Aphrodite and Ares, as they were known in the Greek, right, had a long and illicit relationship. Um, Aphrodite, or Venus, was married to Hephaestus, the smith god, right? But she had a long-running affair with Ares, right? And as a product of this affair, they give birth to Eros, right? And so, which is the kind of primal force of attraction, right? And it's a god of desire. And now it's sort of been like whittled down into a cute little Cupid that we only see on Valentine's Day, right? But if we think about Eros, right, it is the desire, the thing that motivates and drives us to go after what we want, and it's the thing that attracts us to life, to each other, right? To the things that we find beautiful or pleasing or interesting or intriguing, right? And so as Venus and Mars come into this supportive aspect, right, into this harmonious trine, they're able to give birth to this divine child, right, of Eros. And so during this week, when this transit is activated, right, we can consider what we would like to give birth to, what desires we want to call up and bring out into the world, right? And again, Eros deals with connection and what we are drawn into connection with. So we can consider how we want to connect and what we want to connect with. And Eros is right often just relegated to physical attraction and sexuality. But if we expand our perspective and think about the web of connection that we are existing in both non-human and non-human ways, and also in the unseen world, right? Um, we can think about Eros as the kind of erotic, not necessarily in a sexual sense, but in the sense of aliveness and our ability to feel alive through the activation of our senses and the ways in which we're able to connect with things that please us, right? So, with the connection between Mars and Venus, there's this real opportunity to come into connection with the world through our senses and to share this sense of aliveness that we experience when we tune into the felt sense and the sensual awareness of the world. And we can kind of and we can really think about how we connect with what we care about, right? And how we kind of witness what emerges, right? When we give a little space to tune into that sense of aros, right? That sense of attraction. And we can allow ourselves the ability to sort of lean into that attractive force and allow it to kind of pull us, not in ways that are derailing, right? But in ways that really support that sense of aliveness through the sensual and erotic connection, right? And I'm using erotic not again, not in like a sexual way, but in this sense of aliveness, being able to feel, the wind on your face and being like, whoa, like I'm here, this is happening, like what a wild sensation, right? And being open to curiosity and really cultivating that force of aliveness that can be developed within us through this like very harmonious relationship between Mars and Venus. And again, our kind of actions and desires, or what gives us pleasure, and our ability to, show up for that. So, yeah, like Snake Channeler was saying, fun week. Happy birthday. So also Thursday, May the 22nd, we have the Sun in Gemini, Gemini sextiling Neptune in Aries. This is happening at 1 degree and 40 arc minutes. So Neptune is dissolving, right? And the Sun is coming off of this sextile to Saturn, which is the last aspect that Saturn will make in Pisces before they enter into Aries at the end of the week. And so while Saturn was helping us to kind of structure what creates safety and value for ourselves, now the sun has moved into Gemini, totally different place, totally new sign, and they're more concerned with like communication and information and quick movement. And now Neptune may be dissolving some of these Saturnian scaffolds and prohibitions that we developed earlier in the week, right? Which is not a bad thing. Again, this is a harmonious aspect. So where Saturn might have like asked for too much responsibility, Neptune is kind of like dissolving some of that and being like, you know what if we just chill out, right? What if we, just like look at this blacklight poster for a little while, right? Wouldn't that be helpful? Right. And so the this sextile aspect to Neptune is helping us to move from the kind of concrete of Saturn and the like very like realistic and practical aspect of Saturn to the more symbolic, right? And now Neptune can help us to tap into the intuitive information that arises from deep within, right? Neptune is this sort of connection to the numinous, to the sea of consciousness, and the sun in Gemini is like all about information. So this is like gathering internal kind of unseen or transpersonal information. And I don't know about y'all, but when I think about Gemini, I think about kind of the process of gathering external information and kind of assimilating it right in the system and then sharing it back out, communicating it. Or with this Neptune sextile, we might find an increased ability to tune into the internal information, right? Or information that we are receiving from the unseen world. Right. So this might also help us to cultivate a bit more empathy because Neptune can be pretty altruistic. It holds the image of the sea of consciousness that we are all swimming in. And so it is willing to kind of make sacrifices, knowing that everything is part of everything and everything is kind of connected through the web of the cosmos. And so we may find ourselves inspired to help others, which I think is great. I think service is really important and a beautiful way of coming into connection with ourselves and with the world, right? We also might find ourselves kind of longing for something that feels just out of reach, or ways of connecting to others that help us to recognize the ways that we are held in this web of experience, right? So the sun in Gemini knows how to do this through conversation, right? And through the sharing of information. So we can consider having conversations that help us to come into deeper connection with each other. Neptune and Aries may be sort of dissolving some of our sense of individuality, and we may come into a sense of unity that Neptune longs for through like the mind meld, right? So this is a great time to practice your psychic communication or just picking up on psychic information, right? And just noticing, right? You don't have to do anything with it, right? Just noticing. Um, and also like coming into the mind meld with nature or pets, right? Or, like just tuning in and seeing what information we pick up, right? um uh, yeah, and so we can kind of lean into conversations and communications that help us to dissolve the sense of separation in safe ways and not like unhealthy, enmeshed ways. What we may find ourselves really drawn into these deep mental connections around Thursday that help us to feel like we belong and we're not separated. And we also might find really valuable information in our dreams as this transit perfects. So this might be a great week to practice writing down your dreams, very Gemini thing, or telling your friends about a dream or calling a dream hotline, which is a very Sun, Gemini, Neptune thing to do. Um, okay, so moving right along to Saturday, May the 24th. We have the Sun in Gemini trining Pluto, who is retrograde in Aquarius. This is happening at 3 degrees and 43 arc minutes. So again, trines happen between the same element. So we have an air trine happening between the Sun and the mutable sign of Gemini and Pluto in the fixed air sign of Aquarius. And so the Sun trine Pluto calls us to do some deep inner work, right? And to pay attention to what's under the surface. Um, it's kind of seeking to uncover the inner workings and hidden motivations of situations and events. Pluto's a planet that deals with power, right? And with this supportive aspect between the Sun, who deals with our sense of self, our ego identity, as well as our aspirations, we are really asked to consider issues of power, especially personal power, right? What is the power that we hold in our lives and in our bodies, right? Where do we access power? How do we notice power? What does power feel like, right? Can you feel it in your hands? Do you feel it in your feet? Do you feel it in your heart? Right? Do you feel it, when you stand like Wonder Woman, right? So like, yeah, how do we like notice power in ourselves? How do we access it? Can we notice the places where it leaks out, right? And the power of the Sun is its light and its heat, right? And so how do we hold this light and heat in our lives? How do we allow it to radiate out into the world, right? There's a lot of power in being able to allow ourselves to shine, but that might not always be safe, right? And so maybe like we've learned to make ourselves small, right? And I'm not saying like just sort of ta-da, right? We got to move slowly, but this harmonious aspect maybe like helping us notice, okay, like maybe it's all right if I, stand a little taller, right? Or open my chest a little bit more in safe places around safe people, right? You know, how do we can think about how we allow Pluto, right, and the kind of deep subterranean forces to empower us to stand in the light of the sun, right, to claim space and say, I am here, right? And how that can support us in radiating our light in the world. And I think like a very powerful thing just to start with, right, is to stand there and be like, I am here, right? And just like claim that and to be able to notice that and just notice what that feels like in your body. Right? When you stand there and you stand tall and you say, I am here, right? I am me. And like, I feel parts of myself being like, no, no. And it's a practice, right? So, we learn to do this. It's a muscle that we strengthen, right? And so Pluto deals with the shadow, right? So this can be thought of as like unintegrated, unconscious material. And with this supportive aspect between Pluto and the sun, right, we can shine a light on some of our shadow material, on some of this unintegrated psychic stuff. And this can help us illuminate places where we're stuck or keep repeating old patterns, right? Places where we're like locked in obsession. Pluto is pretty obsessive, right? It also might illuminate some hidden material, like secrets that might be holding us back and preventing us from really feeling into our power and being able to express our power, right? It may illuminate places of shame or places where we want to reject parts of ourselves. And with this aspect, it's an opportunity to really allow these parts to come up into the light and to reintegrate in some ways. And I think about the sun as like some spiritual bleach, right? It helps to cleanse and purify the parts that have been rejected or relegated to the shadows, right? It's a very like cohering and illuminating principle. And I think about, for myself and like when I've done this type of work, I think about like these parts that I've like shoved away or rejected or I'm like, no, right? And then later on when I go back and find them, they're like this like pale like kid that's, been hiding in a box, right? And they're covered in cobwebs. And they're like all like spooky and like they're scary to like come into contact with these parts of ourselves, right? But like when I'm able to kind of like welcome them back and like pull them up into the light, it like helps them to like clean off and like wipe some of the cobwebs off and to get a little color in their skin, to get a little healthier, and I think that being able to bring these things into the light is really helpful, right? And it brings them a lot of joy because ain't no one want to be like shoved in a corner or put in a box, stuffed away, right? Told that they're bad. Like that sucks. It's much nicer to be able to stand in the sun, right? And have a refreshing non-alcoholic beverage sitting on a lawn chair, right? Some lemonade, right? With sunglasses on poolside. Like that's a much better place to be than being locked in a box because, you know, uh somebody's ashamed of you. Right. And so when we can allow these things to come into the light, we can also recognize them for what they are, right? That these parts of ourselves are not bad or wrong, right? They were adaptations to difficult situations, right? And they're created out of challenging situations, right? And so we're able to sort of see them in their full form and to have compassion for them, right? And straight up plutonic material, right? Underworld material can be really scary and difficult to sit with, right? But just like kind of seeing shadows in the dark, which cause us to make up stories about monsters, right? When we see like, we look over there and it's like, hands scraping on the window and Scooby's like, right? And jumps into Shaggy's arms. And then Velma comes in and it's like Jinkies and turns on the light, and you just see that it's a coat, right? And branches on the window. It's not a monster at all. So as we're able to kind of illuminate these places, we can like really see them for what they are, right? And we can actually begin to work with them instead of making up these stories and projecting these like terrifying possibilities onto these shadowy projections, right? And so this is a really good opportunity for self-knowledge. We might feel motivated and empowered to kind of pursue the things that we aspire to. It's always a good idea to check in and see what the forces that are motivating us are, right? To ask ourselves, why are we doing this? But this is a really good time to sort of tap into that sense of power to begin to make changes. So also with the Sun in Gemini trine Pluto in the air signs of Gemini and Aquarius, right? Information is power, right? And this is just something to consider. And the information that we gather here helps us to see the failings in systems, both in our personal lives and in the world around us. And I think this is a very Pluto and Aquarius thing, right? Finding the rot in systems from a outside perspective, right? And the information that we receive here helps us to kind of observe situations and hopefully recognize how we can pivot and improve things that aren't working or that are keeping us stuck in these old patterns. Right? And so this transit also gives us the ability to communicate powerfully. And as the inner shadow material becomes revealed, it unlocks energy that allows us to express ourselves in a more empowered way. And our words and communications may have a big impact this week. So speak wisely, all right? Or maybe taking in information that has a big impact on our lives and psyches as well. There might be secrets that come to life, right, in our personal lives or in the larger world, so pay attention to that. And this may reveal underworld material and things that have been suppressed or repressed, right? However, Pluto can be like pretty ruthless, and so information might be used for dark or sinister purposes. So also, watch out for that. Right. And I'm thinking about things like companies selling travel data to ICE to assist them in illegally harassing or imprisoning and or deporting people. I'm also thinking about what just happened with Elon Musk's Grok AI, which dropped during the Sun Uranus conjunction, right? A little earlier in the week. And again, like Grok started to respond to every inquiry with like some made up nonsense about white genocide in South Africa. And when the AI was asked, somebody was like, "Yo, who do you think gave you that program?" The AI was like, "Yeah, it was most likely Elon Musk." His own AI like threw him under the bus and was like, "Yeah, this dude, totally sus." Right? Anyway, this is just an example, right, of manipulation of power, right, by using information to spread lies and trying to rewrite history. So, yeah, these are just some things to pay attention to. All right, I'm going to try and speed through a couple of these, but we'll see how we do. We got a little time. So, also Saturday, May the 24th, kind of big day. Um, Oh, nice. Somebody's saying my shadow self has Dorito crumbs in the corners of her mouth. That's awesome. What flavor? Right? That's my first question. But being like, oh, that's cool. I noticed, can I help you? Right? Is that cool? You want some water, maybe? So anyway, Saturday, May the 24th, we have Mercury in Taurus conjoin Uranus in Taurus at 27 degrees and 42 arc minutes. So this conjunction can provide some insight and inspiration, right? Uranus's sudden discoveries and strokes of genius, like a light bulb coming on, right? And Mercury really helps to mediate the information of the gods or archetypes or planets, however you want to consider them. Um, Right. And so Mercury helps to like mediate this information that we're receiving from these higher forces, right? And helps us to like get the message because we can't just tap into that energy, it's too much. And so Mercury like helps to digest it a little bit and hand it to us in a way that like we can hold it. And so this can be a moment of revelation, right? We may gain new insight onto situations or feel flashes of inspiration, right? Uranus is like a bolt of lightning. And Mercury can really help channel that lightning into something that can help provide power and illumination, right? Without it just blowing everything up, right? Because lightning is dangerous. And if you just like stand out there with an umbrella in a lightning storm, right, trying to court it, right, we can get zapped, right, or burnt out or blown up. So Mercury and Uranus are also connected with our nervous systems, and so we might feel some nervous system overwhelm or overload, right? And this transit can feel kind of manic, too many thoughts, right? No way to hold or integrate this flash of information that we receive, or just too much information, or like the feeling of too much electricity shooting through the system. So this is a really good week to kind of care for ourselves, like care for our nervous systems, try and do things that feel soothing to help us to like hold a container to be able to receive the genius of Uranus, right? And the messages that Mercury brings in, right? And how it steps that down. Right. So maybe like not too much caffeine towards the weekend, making space to process whatever comes up. Again, I think finding ways to express it. I really love creativity or writing is a really great Gemini way of expressing and channeling information. This is occurring in Venus's sign of Taurus, right? So doing Venusian things to help channel the inspiration can be really helpful. Creative practices like making art or music or dancing or Gemini things like writing, right? So spending time in nature with animals can also help us to ground and to discharge some of the frenetic mental energy that this transit can bring. But, if we're able to create a good container, this is a great time for like insight and inspiration. And so one thing to think about also is like, how do you create a space for inspiration to arise, right? How do you create a space to receive the lightning of inspiration in skillful ways so it doesn't blow you up, right? But is able to turn on the light bulb and give you that eureka moment, right? So, all right, here's the big one of the week. Sorry, sorry, it's happening late in the week. We might have not have a ton of time to talk about it, but I think I'll be talking more about it over the next 3 years because on Saturday, May the 24th, Saturn enters Aries, which is a cardinal fire sign, and it also happens to be the place where Saturn is in their fall. Wah, wah. And a planet in fall is kind of laid low, right? It's in a depression. Um, Talk about that more in a moment. But so Saturn will be in Aries from May the 24th, 2025 until April 2028. There we'll make a short return trip to Pisces. I don't have those dates on me. I apologize. And yeah, so those of you born with Saturn in Aries are welcome to your Saturn return, my friends. You've heard about it, and now it's here. For those of you with Saturn in Pisces, you're getting a little reprieve from your Saturn return, and this is a great opportunity for you to kind of integrate the information that you have received over the past 2.5, 3 years, right? And really come up with a final plan for when Saturn returns to Pisces and is like, okay, like what did you learn here? And so that you're able to like take this moment as the pressure comes off to kind of integrate and rethink and be like, okay, what have I been developing? What have I been learning? What have I been making real? What is really important to me? What am I dedicating to? What are the structures that I've created? And so when Saturn comes back and like pushes on it, you're strong. You're like, nah, I got this, right? For those of you with Saturn in Aries, like Saturn's entering into your sign for your Saturn return and is going to come through and be like, what are you doing? Like, what do you want to make real? What are you actually like committing to? Like, come on, get it together, man. Right. And again, we'll talk more about this in the coming weeks. So Saturn, previously, Saturn was in Aries from 1996 to 1998. And then before that, from 1996 to 1967 to 1969. And also, the last time that Saturn was in Aries, the 96 to 98 period, was also the opening square, part of the opening square of the Saturn Neptune square, where when Saturn was in late degrees of Aries and Neptune was in the late degrees of Capricorn, and that perfected in 98, just at the end of Saturn's time in Aries. So just a little context for y'all. All right. So Saturn, like I said, is in their fall in Aries, right? And this is when a planet is in its fall, it's laid low, it's in a depression, it's in a hole, and it tends to have its skills used against it. So every time Saturn tries to do like one of its structuring things or like suppressing things or limiting things, right? It just digs itself deeper into this hole, which can be really frustrating. Right. So Aries is this cardinal fire sign. It's about ignition and combustion. It's about like getting things started, right? It's trying to get things going. It's about exploring and conquering, right? Saturn is slow and methodical. Saturn is time, right? Saturn is trying to come up with a strategy to ensure success, to make sure that the fire doesn't get out of control and burn everything down, right? And so while Saturn is kind of practicing fire safety, right? And it's like, we need to get the fire extinguisher and a bucket and a shovel, right? Aries has already gone off and started four more fires, right? Just think about that, right? You're like, oh no, we got to take care of this thing. And then you're like, oh my God, right? All that, you just started all these other fires. Like, what am I going to do? So Saturn might feel like they can't do their job here, or it's really challenging for them to do their job, right? And Saturn is all about making things that are lasting and can withstand the test of time. But Aries is impulsive and wants to start new things and wants to start them now. Doesn't want to do all the preparation work that Saturn is trying to put together, right? It wants to just figure it out. Or if it doesn't work, it wants to leave and just go on to the next thing, right? Saturn is like, hell no, absolutely not. That's not how we do things, right? What we need here is some structure. Right? We need a plan. And Aries is already like over there doing something else, right? Setting something else on fire, right? Starting a new project. So it's overwhelming, right? I think about Saturn as like climbing a mountain, right? And just like consider all the preparation that we need to make in order to make our climb successfully, right? To reach that long-term goal. And right, so all the like gear that we need and the maps and the resources, right? So that we can successfully summit this peak and like not die along the way. Aries sees the mountain, is like, cool, I'm going up there, bro. See you later. And we'll try and just run up it. However, it's really hard to run up a mountain, right? And it require like getting up a mountain requires sustained effort, which Saturn can bring, right? Um, and it's but Aries just like wants to go and do it and then like runs out of energy and gets burnt out, right? And so we're kind of may find ourselves lacking the resources to really complete these long-term goals because we didn't utilize forethought or prepare well enough, right? Saturn here, right? Saturn is restrictive, constrictive, little bit of a downer, right? And Saturn might make us feel like we are not able to take action around the things that inspire us. Saturn might come in and be like, that's wrong, that's bad, don't do that, right? It also might feel like old systems are causing us to fight harder to initiate change or to claim space. Aries, I think, is a lot about claiming space. And again, being like, I am here. Um, like Saturn is kind of like a curmudgeon who doesn't really like change, right? But Aries brings the change. It is the first sign of spring where new life struggles and fights its way through the surface of the earth to claim space in the sun, right? And Saturn can make us feel like pretty restricted as we try and initiate ourselves as sovereign individuals. It may make us feel constricted as we try and claim space for ourselves in the world and carve out a little space to belong, right? Aries is the sign where the sun is exalted, right? So there's kind of a solar resonance here, a sense of sovereignty and agency. Saturn can represent forces of control that seek to prevent individuals from individual expression and agency, right? Saturn is really invested in maintaining order. That is difficult when with each person being a sovereign individual with free will and agency to make their own decisions. So we may see power struggles and incongruencies that are developing from the Aries notion of like, I am me and I want to do this thing, and Saturn like really trying to maintain a status quo. You may see tensions building between structures that seek to suppress or oppress, and the Aries drive towards self-expression and autonomy. And so Saturn was in Aries from 1967 to 1969, right? And this period saw an intensification of the anti-war movement around the world and massive protests against Vietnam all over the world, um, as well as a intensification of the civil rights movement. And during Saturn's time in Aries in the late 60s, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert RFK, Robert Kennedy were both assassinated, the senior. There were also like massive protests around the world that fought back against oppression and the old order that was like really seeking to maintain the status quo. And so that's just a little preview of some themes and issues that might come up with Saturn in Aries. I got a couple more things to say on Monday if y'all want to stick around. I know we're at time. Um, oh, somebody, Astrology by Moonlight is talking about a Seinfeld episode where they climbed a mountain and Kramer forgot to hook the ropes. And it's funny that you bring up Seinfeld because the first episode of Seinfeld aired during the Saturn, sorry, the yeah, Saturn Neptune conjunction in the late 80s in 89. And the last episode airs during the opening square during in the late 90s, like in the between 96 and 98. So I think that's funny. Like the Seinfeld is a Saturn Neptune, like has a Saturn Neptune run to it. I believe that Sex and the City airs under the opening square as well around the time of Saturn and Aries last time. Maybe it's Saturn and Taurus, but that Sex and the City is also a Saturn and Neptune thing. Um, whoa. Okay. Um, I need to, Gina Maria just put something in the chat about um, uh, uh, anyway, I'll have to look into that later. And I don't know if the Larry David had an astrologer, but I think that culture and cinema, especially cinema, is very Neptunian, and I think it has a way of kind of expressing these archetypes into the collective. And Seinfeld is a very like Saturn Neptune thing, like a show about nothing, right? It's just like a structure that like shows repeatedly, right? Has seasons, has a time that it does it, right? But it's about nothing. And so I think that's incredibly like Saturn Neptune. Okay. Last couple things I want to say. Sunday, May the 21st, Sunday, May the 25th, excuse me, Mercury enters Gemini. And so Mercury rules Gemini, and as they move into their diurnal sign of their rulership, they gain a lot of power, right? The sun moved into Gemini earlier in this week, so the sun is getting its resources from Mercury, and now Mercury has a lot of ability to fulfill its agenda and support the sun as it moves into the sign of their rulership. Mercury in Gemini is fast moving, quick thinking, able to communicate easily. However, it can be a little TMI, right? We might feel some information overload. We might feel pulled in multiple directions, right? One thing that I think about with Mercury is their role as a guide and a trickster, and they may lead us into places and situations so that we can be at the right place at the right time. Things may not always go according to a linear track or a pre-established plan, but when we can trust in Mercury, they tend to lead us to where we need to be. Right. So it might be like missing a train and feeling annoyed, but when you're waiting for the next one, you overhear a conversation that helps you to like solve a problem that you've been working on in your head, or like gives you a little bit of like inspiration about like, oh, that's this thing that I was thinking about. Maybe I should pursue it in this way, right? So in Gemini, Mercury is holding both the symbolic and the literal simultaneously. And so this is a great time to pay attention to synchronicities and to notice patterns, right? Mercury is fantastic at making connections. And again, Mercury is this guide and mediator between us and the gods. So it's a good time to practice following their lead, especially because they are the one who is resourcing the sun right now. And then last thing I want to say, rounding out the week, also on Sunday, May the 25th, we have Mercury sextile Saturn in Aries. This is at 0 degrees and 4 arc minutes. Mercury in Gemini, Saturn in the cardinal fire sign of Aries, just having entered in there the day before, right? So this is the first aspect that Saturn is making once they enter into Aries. And this feels really helpful, right? Because it's a supportive aspect, and Mercury is the psychopomp, it's the guide, it's the messenger, right? Saturn is just entering this new place where they're pretty under-resourced, right? And Mercury can help guide them a little bit here. Mercury might provide some information that can help Saturn to find their bearing in Aries, right? And Saturn and Mercury contacts can be discerning. And so we may get some ideas about the things that need to change or the work that we are being asked to do over the next couple of years with Saturn moving through Aries, right? Or the places in our lives where we may need to buckle down and work a little harder. So this is a great time to think about improvement, what you want to improve, what needs improvement, right? There might be that Aries energy to like just leap in. Oh, I've got to do all these things, right? But today it might be good enough to just make a list, right? Let's start there before you start like tearing holes in the walls. Let's make a list, right? And list out the things that we want to work on or feel like we should work on, right? Or the places where we see that things can use a little improvement. We also might want to make a list of our goals for Saturn's time in Aries, which again is from May 24th until April of 2028, right? So, what are some of the things that you want to work on over the next, I don't know, 3 years? You know, and don't start working on them, right? Saturn is slow, right? So, but it might be a great time to get some ideas of, okay, I'm here, we're starting this new cycle, right? What do I want to work on? What do I want to improve? What could be a little bit better? What would help me to feel more myself or more in alignment, right? What changes do I want to see around me? Just list it out. And it might be an interesting thing to check back on in 28, right? 2028 and see how many things you did or like how that helped to structure your experience of Saturn's time through Aries. So, with that, my friends, I will bid you a fond farewell. Thank you so much for tuning in and riding along with me through this week in space. Again, I'm a guy who likes to talk. My name is Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a tarot reader, astrologer, licensed mental health counselor. I also do coaching, astrological coaching. If you're interested in any of those services or you just want to say what's up, you can hit me up on my website, Camp Wizard Camp. DM me. I love the DMs. I kind of not a big fan of the emails, but I love the DMs. It's casual. It's cool. Also, yeah, I have a radio show called The Melee Report. I just released it last night. It's a lot of the same material that we cover, but with a lot more music. So check that out. There's a link in my stories. There's also, I'll put a link in the bio. Yeah, thank you, Astrology by Moonlight. Uh, and thank you, Gina Maria. Yeah, Gina Maria saying that I'm an amazing reader. Oh, thank you. So anyway, those are some things that I got. I also just taught a class with my partner, Marlena Seven Bremner, on the classical planets through myth, magic, and alchemy. You can find that on her website at marlena7bremner.com. There's a link in my bio. There's also links in the show notes. That's all the astro weather that is fit to print, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like it, share it, hit the like button or subscribe or share it, tell other people. I don't know, like do what you're supposed to do to support this project because it's a lot of fun and I want it to reach as many people as it can or as many people as it'll benefit. So yeah, if you can like it, subscribe, share, do whatever, I don't know, follow me, one of those things. I appreciate it. And if you don't feel like it, that's totally fine too. And I just hope you have a great week in space. Whew. All right. Bye now. And yeah, till next time, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.